And we're live. Welcome back, everybody, to a new episode of the Wheelie Podcast. I'm your host, Micah Toll, and I'm joined again by Electrek's Seth Weintraub. How's it going, Seth?
I'm good.
Awesome. And we have a bunch of new stories this week. We've got a few new e-bikes rolling out. Aventon and Xtracycle have some new models. We're going to talk laws again because this is the year of new e-bike laws, so why not? Then we've got some other cool things to look at moving into the heavier end of micromobility. We've got some interesting rollouts from Honda, from Kawasaki, and Royal Enfield. So where are we going to start off with this week, Seth?
All right. New Aventon Ramblas ADV e-bike brings 100 Newton meter of torque and 90-mile range to the trails.
Yeah, this is the latest in the Ramblas line. This first launched a few years ago now from Aventon, and it was their first big push into really a higher tier electric mountain bike. So this is their new ADV version. It builds on that A100 mid-drive motor that they debuted on that first Ramblas bike a few years ago when they pushed into that mountain bike segment. This is apparently sort of like the second generation of this motor. Aventon tells us it was designed in-house, so it's not a motor you're going to find on other bikes. They claim it's 250 watt nominal, but 750 watts peak. As we know, a lot of these motors, especially mid drives, the wattage number is sort of take it with a grain of salt because it depends on what your local laws are. That's usually where they get the power rating from. But the real number to look at here is the torque, because in the US, torque is not a regulated figure. And so that's the one they can be honest about. So 100 Newton meters of torque is pretty much near the top of the retail e-bike power ratings or torque ratings rather. There are a few mid-drive motors out there like we talk about like the Bafang Ultra, the M620 that I think gets up to like 160 Newton meters. But when it comes to bikes that are like, retail from a company already built, not DIY sort of stuff, 100 Newton meters is near the top of what you can get. So this is going to be a very, very torquey mountain bike. But not only is it high power, not only is it going to be good for climbing, but they've kitted this thing out with some pretty nice componentry here. First of all, it rides on 29-inch wheels, tubeless compatible, which is great. It does have a dropper seat post, which is sort of like one of the cutoffs for when you start getting into those fancier, higher end e-bikes. For the
Yeah.
transmission, it's got SRAM NX Eagle. It's their 12-speed. Let's see, what else does it have here? 4 piston brakes on 200 millimeter rotors, I
Oh,
believe.
wow. Big.
Um, yeah, those are big brakes. So this is not your typical direct to consumer electric mountain bike here. This is definitely a push towards folks that would be considering something more like a Trek, and they're saying like, well, I don't really have $4,000. Do I have $2,900 for a nicer electric mountain bike? And that's sort of the sweet spot they're looking at 2899. This is definitely I would say on the higher end of a direct to consumer e-bike, but Aventon has been around for a while. People know what they're getting. Aventon's known for pretty good customer service, definitely good build quality. They've had some of the nicest frames in direct to consumer bikes for years now. I mean, like 5 or 6 years, I've just been like drooling over welds on Aventon frames. So like they know what they're doing. They build nice bikes, and for all of the components that you're getting into this bike, as well as a pretty big battery. Let me see where I have the battery spec here, but I remember it was fairly large if I'm not
I mean, if it's
mistaken.
going 90 miles, it's going to be pretty big.
Yeah, exactly. Now, of course, that's going to be in the lower pedal assist,
Yes,
but
of course.
when they rate them that high, and Aventon has also been pretty good about reasonable range ratings. So yeah, there it is. We've got a 708 watt hour battery. So again, that's going to be on the higher end for electric mountain bikes. Generally, you're going to be looking at more like 500, 600 watt hours when they're using like Bosch systems. Of course, Bosch does have bigger batteries, but most of the time they're not putting the biggest, heaviest batteries on those things. So this is going to have a little more range than we're used to seeing on these types of higher end electric mountain bikes. So all in all, it looks like a pretty nice shot across the bow of some of these nicer companies. Now, is it really going to compete, like pound for pound against higher end bike shop style companies? Of course
Right.
not. There are going to be smaller fit and finish details, along the way, but SRAM NX Eagle, like the same components you're going to find on bike shop bikes. The same dropper post, the same nice tires, the same tubeless rims. Like, there's a lot going on this bike that is sort of these are commodity parts, right? Like you'll find them on many bikes from different companies. So you know what you're getting with a lot of these components, and that's a big step up from the direct to consumer electric mountain bikes we're used to seeing. So it looks like a pretty nice bike. Would you take this on your trails, Seth?
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the bike shop piece. I've seen Aventon in a lot more bike shops lately. I don't know if that's just a Northeast thing, or if they're actually getting their bikes out there a little bit more than in the past.
Yeah, it's a good
But
point. Aventon's done a good job over the last few years of really expanding their independent bike shop network. So you actually have local dealers to go to, both to try the bike and to turn to for service and support. So that's an excellent point. Sometimes uh, I use that phrase like a bike shop bike to talk about like Trek and Santa Cruz and some of these other
specialized.
nicer.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Some of these nicer companies that we think of as only being available through a bike shop model. But now you're absolutely right. A lot of these brands, I mean, even some of the more budget end, Electrek is in many independent bike shops. So it's kind of not fair, I guess, anymore to use that term like a bike shop bike, because now you can find so many direct to consumer bikes available using the bike shop model. So it's an excellent point.
Yeah, and I've seen even electrics and obviously rads in bike shops now. I think the bike shops have kind of gotten the memo that the drop ship price tag isn't is kind of a something that they need to to work with.
Yeah, it's a huge
Maybe if
chunk of the
you
market.
yeah, and I think bike shops I think they make most of their money on the upkeep and upgrades and repairs rather than on
Accessories. Yeah,
actual sale. Yeah. So I think that's good for everybody if that continues. All right,
absolutely.
let's move along here. The Xtracycle Swoop ASM launched as a cargo e-bike that fits the entire family.
This is a pretty cool one. We talk about different cargo bikes a lot, and when it comes to long tail cargo bikes, the kind that have that stretched rear, a lot of them are fairly similar, right? Like, if you look at a rad wagon, there are a lot of bikes that look like a rad wagon. But Xtracycle, which was one of the earliest bikes or earliest companies in the long tail cargo bike space. They came out with a new model called the Swoop ASM. It stands for I think it's the automatic smile machine, if I'm not mistaken. So kind of a cute little name there. But the big differentiator here is that it's designed to fit four people, or they call it two plus. I think they don't want to limit themselves. They're showing it in a lot of the marketing images here with three kids sitting on the rear rack. Theoretically, you could probably get a fourth one up front in one of those front mounted child seats, not on like the front rack, but the ones that mount like on the behind the handlebars there. As long as you're
Yeah.
staying within the weight rating here. But this is very much a like bring the entire family. Like you're in Southeast Asia and everyone's on the same motorcycle kind of e-bike here,
I was
which
just
is
thinking that.
a cool, yeah, right. Like it's a cool differentiator. And Xtracycle, this is not like some um, drop ship like cheap company. This is a one of the originators of the category. They make higher end stuff. Here they're using the Shimano. I think it's the EP6 mid drive motor. So very very good parts here. This is, I believe it's class 3 capable too. So it'll ship in class 1 mode, but you've got the option to unlock it to go up to 28 miles per hour or 45 kilometers per hour. There's no throttle available here, so it's not going to be a class 2. You can do class 1 or class 3. But basically, just like a very nice, not, I wouldn't say like Reese and Muller or turn level, but just under that uh, electric family cargo bike that can just fit like a ton of people here with that stretched rear end. This one I have not tried. I have tried the Xtracycle Hopper, which is a hub motor based long tail cargo bike, and that one I was really impressed with what Xtracycle had done. And so they've sort of upped the ante here with some nicer components. that Shimano mid-drive motor. I believe this one also has Shimano's automatic transmission as well. So you're getting, just a lot of really good componentry. It's kind of like follows the game plan of that Aventon Ramblas before, which was just like keep adding on more and more of those higher tier components and try not to let the price creep up too much. Now, this one is a bit more expensive. I think the promotional pricing is $4,000 or like $39.99 on the launch here. But again, this is not like a entry level electric cargo bike, right? Like, first of all, this is rated to carry the whole family. Second of all, it's got all those nicer components, the Shimano mid-drive, the automatic transmission. This one also has a dropper post, which generally you see on mountain bikes, but I noticed Xtracycle's been including them on their models now, and I actually found it to be really useful on the hopper because when you've got a lot of weight back there and you come to a stop, it's like kind of awkward if you don't have good footing. And generally, if the bike's set up with the saddle high enough to give you good pedaling, then you don't have great footing without hopping forward. So with the dropper post, when you come to a stop, you just drop the seat down and you've got your 2 feet flat on the floor and you can better balance all the kids or gear you've got back there. So it's a cool inclusion here. They do use the type of dropper post where you have to reach to a lever that's under the saddle as opposed to like a handlebar button mounted one. It
Mm.
simplifies things a little bit in terms of like cable routing, but it looks a bit strange and like it feels a bit strange the first few times you do it because you're kind of like reaching up under yourself in an intimate way to work the little lever there. So it's a bit funny until you get used to the dropper post being activated that way. But once you start using a dropper post, it's so hard to go back to not being able to move your seat height on the fly. It's like just such an upgrade for when you're carrying a bunch of like just wiggly or high center of gravity cargo back there. So this is another one that I'm pretty impressed to see here. Again, not the cheapest bike out there, but certainly undercutting a price of a really nice turn. Certainly undercutting Yuba's and Reese and Moeller and some of the other companies that we know and love for these heavy duty hauling cargo bikes. Urban Arrow, those kind of, especially like the German and the Dutch brands. This is going to come in significantly lower cost. The last thing to consider here with that price is that they actually include basically all of the accessories as part of that. So, all the racks, all the wheel guards, all the extra like passenger carrying stuff, all that just is included in that price. Whereas for a lot of these companies, you just get the base bike, and then you literally have to spend hundreds, sometimes $500, $600, $700 to get all of those different accessories, because just like you were saying, Seth, like accessories is where a lot of the profit is. So
Yeah.
the fact that they include all that in there certainly makes it just that much more appetizing or easy to stomach, at least. Though, from a marketing standpoint, unless they get that point across really well, then the price definitely looks higher when you're comparing it to the base model of all these other companies. So just another thing to consider there. But for me, I'm pretty impressed with this. And I know your kids are a little old for this, Seth, at least to probably get them both back there. But I think you could certainly get one on there if they were agreeable.
Yeah, yeah, my older kid would probably be up front and I'd be in the back, to be honest. He's already taller than me, so I do like the
Wow.
mullet format here, 24-inch front, with the big 203 millimeter. Uh, it's kind of a theme we've seen so far in this podcast. We're going no longer doing the 180 millimeter disc. So I like to see that, especially if you're going to be carrying, at a class 3 with a bunch of, you know, like little kid cargo. You definitely want the big brakes, and the rear wheel being smaller helps a little bit with the torque. It helps a little bit give you lower center of gravity back there. So a lot of thoughtful stuff in here. I do
Definitely.
wonder the 630 watt hour Shimano battery with all that cargo. I wonder if that's going to be. Is there like a second battery option, you think, or is that something that?
I I don't think there's a second battery option. Certainly doesn't look like there'd be anywhere to put it. So I think
Right.
you're limited to that stock battery. Yeah, it's a little bit smaller than I would have liked to see for a bike meant to carry this much weight. but because it is a either class 1 or class 3 and you don't have that throttle option, I think you'll probably end up getting a bit better range than you expect, or at least than we're used
Right.
to when we're laying on the throttle.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks pretty efficient overall. Looks like a solid entry here. All right, let's move on. New California bill to require license plates for electric bikes. Oh dear.
Yeah, I made sure not to lead off with saying what
417 comments too. So,
yeah, there's a lot of people that have a lot of opinions about this. So let me just give you the background here. This is a new bill that's been introduced into the California legislature. This is not law yet. It still has to go through committee and debate and everything. But this is an example of one of these fairly harsh new laws being considered for the regulation of e-bikes. In this case, it does several things, but the sort of like, headline feature here of this law is bringing a registration system to electric bikes to give them car-like license plates. The idea is that this would apply to class 2 and class 3 e-bikes, not to class 1 e-bikes. So if it does not have a throttle and it's limited to 20 miles an hour, you wouldn't have to register it. But if either it has a throttle or it can go up to 28 miles per hour or 45 kilometers per hour without a throttle, then you would need to register it. I think it puts some like very nominal fee for registration, like $4 or something. So it tries not to create a financial hurdle, but you do get a license plate. You have to keep it registered. And the general idea here is that it makes you identifiable, because one of the biggest issues is when you've got some scofflaw on an e-bike and they commit an infraction or they hit somebody, or they do something serious and then they just ride off, and it's like, well, like he was in a gray hoodie on a bike. Like, how do you actually catch that person to enforce the laws? So
it's
it
always a
tries to
hoodie.
create, it's always the ones in the hoodie. So it tries to create a system that you can at least like get a plate, like if there's a car and a hit and run kind of thing. The issue here, well, there are several issues. And I'm not totally against the idea of being able to identify a bike or a rider. I think that there is merit to that when there is a serious infraction. The problem here is in the way it's designed to be implemented. And I think that it comes back to the people who wrote this not really understanding e-bikes. So this bill was introduced by Assemblywoman Rebecca Bauer-Kahn, and she had an interesting quote in the press conference that unveiled this new law. And what she basically said was that this is designed for class 2 and class 3 bikes, but then she said it's those kids on the 60 and 70 mile per hour throttle bikes that this is going to rein in. So it sounds like what her issue is are kids on what we often refer to as e-motos, or like the Surons, Telarias, Tudios, E-Ride Pro, basically all those like mini motorcycles that are causing lots of issues when teens ride them, sort of like hooligans basically. And so it sounds like that's what she's targeting, because she describes this type of rider, but the letter of the law that she's written applies to street legal, speed and power limited electric bicycles. And so it's very frustrating that this literally seems like a case of mistaken identity, that if someone had just sort of opened up a law book and looked at what are these different classes of e-bikes in the state of California, they could have created this law differently or written it differently to better target those, Surons and Telarias, instead of saying class 2 and class 3 e-bikes, which are not motor vehicles under California law or in most states, and are rather basically consumer products like a bicycle, and are not regulated like motor vehicles, no DMV registration, no license plate, no insurance, all that kind of stuff. So to me, this is just unfortunate, because it's like, they've cast a very broad net to try to catch a very specific scofflaw that should theoretically already be covered by motor vehicle laws, because when you have a 60 mile per hour mini electric motorcycle, that's a motor vehicle and it's already required to have, a plate and be street legal. So this seems a bit silly to me in the way that they're trying to implement it. Now, it's not that license plates in and of themselves are a problem. Many countries already have a system for license plates on e-bikes that reach a certain speed or power level. And generally, it happens in places where there's just a critical mass of bikes to the point where, it might be one of the main forms of transportation. And so it's even more of an issue to be able to identify them. When you've got a few kids riding around a neighborhood on class two or class three e-bikes, sure, there can be problems, but it's the biggest issue here are these, 50-mile-an-hour Surons, and this law doesn't really target that, unfortunately. So I'm not a huge fan of the way this has been written. I would be surprised if it actually passes. I mean, it's got many steps to go through, so just procedurally, it doesn't have a great chance, but also the fact that it seems to significantly overreach in a state where a lot of people are big fans of electric bicycles. I just can't see it having too much support as it gets further through this process. So hopefully, if other states are looking at this, which some of them obviously are, New York is considering license plates as well. Hopefully, they don't just sort of copy paste this, because it just seems to be written incorrectly if they're trying to target what they claim they're trying to target. And that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, I really hope that this, doesn't get any further along in the legislation process as it stands. I do understand the 28 mile per hour thing. I mean, I guess like the idea should be, instead of 28 mile per hour, there should be 35 mile per hour or Surani type e-bikes. And I think we're not opposed to that, right? Like I think class three e-bikes should remain, you know,
Bicycles.
unregistered or whatever. But once you get above that, then we're starting to get into the areas where it gets a little bit more dangerous, a little bit rougher things happen. And as the commenter said here, enforce existing laws against e-motos. They are the problem. Who is going to enforce the new law if they aren't enforcing the existing laws? And I think that's probably the like local jurisdictions that have different attitudes. I think if you get common sense laws and enforce those laws, I think that's going to be the best case scenario. And
Absolutely.
so I think that's kind of what we're all hoping for, and not these draconian things like New Jersey. And I hope the backlash in New Jersey is kind of a warning shot to other states that are thinking about stuff like that.
Yeah.
417 comments, though, that's obviously a big deal.
It's on the higher end of one of my posts. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the higher end of any post, really. All right, let's move on to the awesome wireless charger for electric bikes just hit a surprise hurdle.
This one is a bummer. There's this really cool company. It's a Dutch company that created a wireless e-bike charger that charges through the kickstand. So there's a little pad, kind of like the pad you drop your phone on. It's a little bit bigger, and you need to swap your kickstand for theirs, or there's like a chunk that goes onto the kickstand to incorporate all that wireless charging technology, and you just park your bike so that the kickstand lands on the pad, and boom, it's charging. So a really cool setup. They've gone through a couple iterations of the product, but unfortunately, and what kind of came as a surprise to a lot of people in the industry, because it looked like they were doing well, they just declared bankruptcy. So it seems like the issue came down to when they were developing their first version, which got a lot of support. It ended up being significantly more expensive to manufacture, to both design and manufacture, than they expected. They racked up a lot of debt, and so they redesigned it with this newer version, and they got a lot of support from bike shops that were already pre-ordering to sell this thing. But when it came time to raise new money, investors were uncomfortable with new money being used to repay old debt for financing the original version of this. And so basically, they weren't able to raise the money, and restructuring through this bankruptcy was the only way to get out of that debt from the original R&D that was hanging over them. So this came as a bit of a shock, but this doesn't mean this is the end of this cool product, which is called the Tyler, by the way, Tiler. They still plan to move forward under this new financial restructuring. They're still hoping to be able to produce this newer, more cost-effective version. It's not clear if we have an actual MSRP for it, because they don't sell it directly to consumers. They've got, I think, like 100 or something bike shops that are already trying to pre-order and market this thing. But we're not sure yet if they're going to be able to do it now, even though they still seem to be fairly positive about the prospects for this thing. Now, it does have some limitations, of course. I covered this, I think, last summer, if I'm not mistaken, when they first announced their new version here. And it's really cool, but it does require you to park in a specific spot to be able to use it. If you have this charging pad in your garage, that's great. You just put it wherever you park. But they've demonstrated a lot for like outdoor parking for shared fleets, and that's a good use case too, because they're always parked at the same stands sort of thing, not for the like free floating dockless ones, but for the docked e-bike fleets. But if you're parking in a different place each day, then this is probably not the solution for you. The other thing is that it's not a fast charger. It's probably charging at whatever the existing speed of your stock charger is. What it does is it means that you don't have to fiddle around for a charging port. If you're in your garage, you're not bending over between like your car and the wall, or trying to search for a little port under the bike, that sort of thing. It basically removes like one of the nuisances. So on the one hand, it sounds a little bit silly to be like, do you not want to bend over for 3 seconds while you plug in your bike? But like, I use wireless charging for my phone all the time, because like that 3 seconds I don't have to like look for the cord is really nice. So if I could just park my bike and the same action I already do, which is drop in the kickstand, also plugs it in or starts the wireless charger, then that sounds pretty nice to me. Sign me up, right?
Yeah, especially for fleet bikes. I think that's kind of where this would make the most sense, just because, if you have a rack of bikes and you don't want to have to add another, piece to the puzzle, it would make a ton of sense to have something like this. Um, but yeah, I can see how this is going to be one of those things that's going to be hard to get started unless you had, like a big bike company kind of leading the way on this. I don't know that as a third party, this would be something that would, especially for the price, get that many people excited. I know, for me, I'm looking at this and I'm like, yeah, that's nice. It'd be nice if it was all there and the price was negligible, and, um, like I can plug in a plug, but it's a great idea, but I don't know that it's gonna catch on. It reminds me a little bit of wireless charging for electric cars. I mean, for phones, it's a different story. You're not really losing that much energy, and um, it's a pretty simple thing to do. But for bikes and cars, it's a little bit more. You have to install something. You have to, get the vehicle right in the right spot, proprietary, all those things. So I don't know that this is going to work or this is going to happen, but I love the thinking behind it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the engineer in me is already like sold on it, just because it's such a cool solution, even if
Yeah,
the problem it solves is not necessarily the biggest problem in the world.
right. Yeah, I mean, I would take standardized charging ports over this, but yeah, not realistic.
Short of that.
All right,
Yeah.
all right, let's move on. Honda unveils new electric moped, cheaper than gasoline equivalent, no motorcycle license needed. Like all of those words.
Yeah, right? Like it's already checking boxes. So
Yeah.
this is the Honda Icon E. It's their latest electric scooter. They've rolled out a number of pretty nice looking sort of smaller format electric scooters, or mopeds, a lot of people call them. Though I get a lot of flack for that from like the old school guys that say it has to have pedals to be a moped, even though that's not always true anymore. But basically, this is what a lot of us would call a scooter. So it's that very step through design, that front shield, that sort of thing. It runs on two of Honda's mobile power packs, which are Honda's own swappable battery standard. But the big thing here is that it is designed to be super low cost, even coming in a bit under the price of Honda's gasoline equivalent scooters. So this one costs, I think it's 220,000 yen, which is around $1,400. I should mention this is, for now, it's only launched in Japan. So big in Japan, not so much in Europe or ever North America, probably, or at least not for a while. But that's 10% cheaper in Japan than Honda's gasoline version. So part of how that's possible, I believe, is that through the use of their swappable battery standard, they're able to make these things more affordable by um, basically it being a swapping as a service. So if you're not buying the battery, but you're sort of signing up for a subscription, which is like how I do with my GoGro, it just makes it significantly less expensive than buying the most expensive part of an electric vehicle, which is the battery. So you have big savings right there, right off the bat.
So this does not come with a battery.
Well, it comes with a battery. It's just I don't think you own the battery. It's like I guess it's not exactly like the propane model because usually you buy the first propane tank and then like you swap them out. Um, but in this case, just like with GoGro, like
Okay.
I don't own the batteries in my GoGro. I only own the scooter, and it came with two borrowed batteries, and I just like once a week swap them out for two new borrowed batteries.
But you have to pay for the service. There's no,
I
I'm taking
believe
my
so.
batteries.
Yeah.
Right. That
So
makes sense.
oftentimes with these swappable ones, there will be like a version where you can buy the batteries or not. Um, all of this is translated from the Japanese language press materials, so some of this is a little hard to work out in the beginning in terms of pricing structures.
Hmm.
But Honda's really pitching like the affordability of this model and the fact that it undercuts the gasoline pricing. The other thing is that it's designed that also in Japan you don't need a full motorcycle license anymore. Basically, you can operate this with the equivalent of a moped license. In the U.S., most states don't have different licenses for different classes of two wheelers. You know, like a moped, a motorcycle, a scooter. It's all considered a motorcycle in the US. But in many
Right.
countries, much of Europe, also Japan, there are different levels of tests. So different licensing, different courses you have to take to be able to get different levels of driver's license. So this is designed so that you can have the most easily accessible license, very low cost, and basically trying to move more and more people out of cars and onto these sort of lighter electric two wheelers. So to me, I mean, I think the biggest part of this, besides just the accessibility, the price, is it's another example of Honda continuing to innovate in electric two wheelers, which they've been doing a pretty good job for 2, 3, maybe 4 years now. Now it was a few years ago we said like, what's Honda doing? Like they're wasting so much time. We don't have anything. Like, they got some nice little prototypes that roll out every now and again, but show me some real bikes. A few years have gone by and they've got a bunch of nice looking scooters. They've got their first full size electric motorcycle. They've got a few smaller motorcycles. So I used to rag on Honda, but now they're doing a pretty good job in the two wheeler space in terms of electrification. And this is just another example of, you don't necessarily need the biggest, the flashiest, the coolest looking vehicle. You can come out with something that just works well and moves people around a city, and it's probably going to get a pretty good reaction. So I'm happy to see this, and I think each one of these the Honda rolls out, it just moves us closer to some of the more interesting, more flagship style bikes that they could be working on. And what is sort of my ultimate goal or my ultimate dream for Honda is to eventually give us a really cool Honda Sport Cub, because that's their like 100 million sold old school style motorcycle, or really it's more of a scooter as well, that just has that like incredible nostalgia for like early Honda motorcycles. And that's the one that I think so many people are waiting on to say like, Honda, you've got this great legacy design, slap some batteries and a motor in it and give me that cool bike. So we're still hoping for that one. But each one of these that comes out, I feel like we're one step closer to Honda saying now's the time to electrify the Cub.
Yeah. I mean, this kind of package, which, $1,400 is pretty incredible. And maybe this is what needs to happen to get the battery infrastructure to a point where you can kind of do a Cub like millions of units out there kind of situation. I love everything about this. This is kind of like the idea, right? This is like what gets you to the next level. This also, for people who don't have, charging infrastructure at home, or, it's not convenient. This allows people to kind of use it like gas. So love everything about this. I didn't see kind of like a top speed. I see, it goes 50 miles per charge, which is 2 batteries, so 25 miles per battery. That seems reasonable. Um, and also, I'm curious if it can run on one battery or if it needs both batteries. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I'm guessing that's also slightly optimistic, like that's the
Mhm.
the manufacturer's range.
Right.
I know my GoGro has similar size batteries, and in real world, I get closer to like 30 miles when I'm going fast and have my wife on the back. So that's 50
Okay.
kilometers. So I'd guess that number is a little high, though it does match closer to what the dealer tells me I should be getting on my scooter.
Right.
In terms of speed, you're right. I don't think I have the speed spec on that one. Again, I was trying to pull all this
I don't think
information
it's
from the
highway
Japanese
capable, right?
sources. Yeah, I highly doubt it. I mean, it might be like urban highway, maybe it's
Right.
like 80 kilometers an hour, 50 miles an hour, that sort of thing. It's
Yeah.
close to where a lot of these get. I know my scooter gets to about like low 90s, which is like high 50s of mile per hour.
Yeah.
And then what was the last thing? Oh, the single battery. That I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's speed limited on a single battery because a lot of scooters that use two removable batteries will give you the option of one, but you're limited to, like 45 kilometers per hour, so about 28 miles an hour. So
Right.
that would not surprise me.
Yeah, but I mean, if you wanted to just take one battery up to your apartment, I mean, this is not the apartment battery situation, but um,
But it could be
generally
because they have
speaking,
that little dock there. Like you could,
right,
if you don't have a swapping station nearby, you can get that cute little charging dock, and it's very easy to
right.
charge at home.
How much do those weigh, the Honda batteries?
Um, I'm not sure. I can tell you my GoGro batteries, which are pretty close to being identical, weigh
Uh,
9 kilos, which is like 22 pounds, something like that,
okay,
20 pounds. So I'm guessing it's around there.
right. So it's kind of like a big thing of dog food to carry up.
Yeah, but in like a nicer package because it's
Yes,
not so bulky and it's got a built-in handle. So like
right,
they're whenever I let people hold them, they're like kind of surprised how heavy they are just because they're pretty compact and you don't expect it to be that
right,
dense. But they're quite reasonable to move around. Like mine, I can stick if I aim well enough, I can do it one-handed into the swap station, so they don't miss, and then I have to take sort of a second swing at it. So that's sort of
got
like
it,
the limiter for me is like, can I one-hand it or not?
right. Yeah, I have to say, like, the thing that's kind of frustrating right now is we now have 2 different battery swap stations and 2 different types of batteries that are very similar in size, and there's really no reason to have 2, like, let's meet halfway with adapters or something.
Oh,
It's
if
just
only
frustrating.
we only had two
Right,
standards and two swap cabinets. I wish.
right. There's 10 and counting now, so good times to be had, I'm sure. It'll be a nice decade where we're trying to figure out which one's gonna be the winner. Let's move on. Enfield CEO confirms launch window for upcoming electric motorcycle. This thing was super popular when it launched.
Definitely. So we're looking at we can now say fairly officially early this year, so probably spring for the Flying Flea C6. This is Royal Enfield's first production electric motorcycle that will become available for sale. Now that will probably be the India launch, though it is expected to reach Europe fairly quickly. This is probably not going to be an India only model for very long. So that's definitely exciting that like the rest of the world's going to get to play with this thing because it is just a beautiful bike. It's inspired by the original Flying Flea, which was a World War II era like paratrooper dropped motorcycle. So it has a lot of really sort of classic vintage styling, which in my opinion they did a great job of combining the new and the old. Some of these vintage like modern vintage or neo retro bikes look a bit funky, but I don't know who did the design work on this, but like they earned their paycheck because this is a very slick looking bike that looks just as new as it does, sort of post-war era inspired. So I really like the design. And they also have two versions of this, which is really cool. What we're looking at is the C6, but they also have an S6 that will be coming shortly after. That's the Scrambler version. So if you're looking for something that's not quite as urban-y looking, they've got that for you as well. But to me, this one here we're looking at, if you're watching the video with us, the C6 is really like the take home one for me, because I just think it's a beautiful looking design. Now, the one thing to note here is we don't have a lot of performance specs yet, which is unfortunate. We don't know the battery capacity, we don't know the speed, we don't know the power. We don't really know anything besides how it looks. So there's some judgment that has to be withheld here until we can say, like, all right, is the battery big enough? Is it powerful enough? Can it go fast enough to fit the kind of commute that people want to use it on? So I wish I could tell you more about it. It's been um, coming up on like 2 years, I think, this year from when they first rolled it out. I think it was the 2024 EICMA. So I guess it's been about a year and a half. So I wish by now they would give us a little more detail, but because the launch appears to be coming in the next few months, we're gonna have to know sooner than later.
Any chance we can get one of these? My God, I love the look of it.
Yeah, I think to get your hands on one, you'd have to do some fancy importing, because it's probably not destined for the US for a while. Doesn't mean
Such a
ever,
shame.
there is, like, there are a bunch of Royal Enfield dealers in the US, so maybe, but for the same reason that, Honda isn't bringing their stuff to the US, I doubt Royal Enfield will do it for a while. But they'll definitely be in Europe. So the next time we're at some show in Europe, we're gonna have to get close to one of these.
Yeah, maybe we can get a media, uh, you know, a one-off sent over or something like that.
You're so optimistic. I love it.
Yeah. But it's just, I mean, the price, 2,750 is one of the estimates. Um, that's less than the Suran, and it's, street legal. I mean, it hasn't been homologated in the US, obviously, but
Yeah, that's the
it's
India
like,
price, remember? Like the
right,
the
right, right,
estimated, like that's like they haven't even announced price, but that's where a lot of India media is sort of projecting that it will fall. Yeah.
right. I mean, if they make this in quantity, I'm sure they can get that price, but it's just one of those aspirational things. I think probably the more likely scenario for this look is that some Chinese company is going to be like, oh, okay, let's just do that. And it'll, something similar will come out of, you know, uh, Talaria's, street bike or something like that.
That would be impressive. I mean, if they can nail this kind of styling, I would consider it, but this looks like they paid some design house a lot of money to get.
Yeah, but I mean, we see the Chinese are fast followers, and I feel
That's
like
true.
I feel like by limiting their distribution here, they're opening a window for the Chinese manufacturers.
That's true.
Anyway,
Fair enough.
anyway, we'll see. All right, one last story, and then we'll hit the comments. If you have any comments, please put them in the comments box, and we'll get to them in a few minutes. But for now, forget the electric bikes. Kawasaki is building an electric horse for actual production.
Yeah, this one's a bit wild. It sounds like an April Fool's, or like, you know, some sort of weird concept kind of device, but Kawasaki seems to swear that they're really going to build what is effectively an electric horse. This is a quadruped. I don't know if robot is the right term. It's because it's controlled by the persons. I don't think it's like autonomous. So it's really like a four-wheeled vehicle, to replace not even a motorcycle. It's more like replacing ATVs, I would say, um, because it's designed for that kind of off-road
Right.
uh, travel. Places where wheels aren't necessarily the best way to get around. I mean, horses are still used in a lot of places because they are like a very effective means of transportation in certain types of terrain. And so that's what Kawasaki's aiming for here with this four-legged um, quadruped vehicle sort of thing. It actually
It's
looks,
almost it's almost like a centaur. Like you're becoming, you're putting like robot legs on yourself.
it does have that look. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I didn't see that at first, but now I can't not see a centaur when I look at this. At least when there's people on it, and
Right.
it does look pretty cool. I can't believe that they actually are bringing this to production. Like this absolutely looks like a really cool concept you put in your booth at a show, and like, you know, you get some people clicking pictures, but they're like, no, this is going to be at the 2030 Riyadh Expo, and then after that we're going to produce it. So, you know, that
I
now
wonder if
talk
there's
is
a
cheap,
military
right?
use for this.
And they do have those. What's it, the Boston Dynamic
Right.
something dog? I forget what those
Hmm.
are, the mule or something. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, this one looks a little flashy for the military. This definitely looks like something they're trying to sell. The
Right.
those Boston Dynamic dogs are a little more sort of like brutes, but yeah, I mean, that's the kind of like thought is the serious overlanding off-road terrain that, you know, a quadruped is the proper type of conveyance compared to tires. Like that's what this is for. So it's pretty neat. The one weird thing here is that they're intending it to. I mean, it is electric, but they're intending it to be powered by hydrogen. So I'm not sure which, if they'd be going for a fuel cell or like a hydrogen burning engine, but I guess because there's not a whole lot of space on this thing. It's not like a motorcycle where you've got like the whole, you know, belly between your knees to put batteries. This seems to be fairly svelte for a horse. Um, I guess they're trying to make it a little more energy dense with hydrogen, but we've got a few years until they're supposed to bring this thing to market. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see them eventually swapping that for lithium batteries to just make this sort of simpler and easier and not rely on, you know, where you're going to get hydrogen in the field. At least with batteries, you can have a prayer of solar recharging if you're somewhere and, you know, have a big rollout panel or something. So that one's a bit of a head scratcher. I mean, the whole thing's a head scratcher, but
The whole
that's
thing. Yeah.
one of the more unbelievable parts of this is that not only would they bring a four-legged electric quadruped to production, but that they would do it on hydrogen as well. So there's some suspension of belief here, I guess. I don't know. I'm not sure we're actually going to see this, but Kawasaki really says they're going to do it. So we'll see if they keep their word.
I mean, maybe it can be like, you know, what the Segway wasn't. It's one of it like a status symbol. Like you roll into your Jackson Hole estate with one of these, and you meet up with your friends, and it's kind of like a, I don't know, like you going through the snow. Maybe these work in snow a little bit better. Maybe climb a mountain a little bit better. I don't know. Just trying to
Or maybe
imagine a use case.
maybe it'll be even more like the Segway, and that like that was the thought, but really it'll be used by like Wozniaks for polo and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, maybe it's a sporting event. This is going to be a new sporting event, like electric polo or something.
Yeah, we'll follow this one. They've got a few years until their expected launch, but we'll keep an eye on this thing.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. All right, let's move comments. Drew Los Angeles is saying an early good morning from sunny Southern California. This guy gets up early. Aventon in Midwest places for several years. Yeah, we've seen Aventon kind of expand to like they're in almost every bike shop that I see nowadays. They're really doing that
Yeah,
work.
hundreds of them. Yeah,
Are the dropship bikes the same price in the LBS? What
I
is?
think they are the local bike shops.
Oh yeah,
I think they are, like you were saying, Seth, you know, like those shops, they often make most of their money in the after sales stuff or like the add-on stuff. So I think their margins are fairly thin on some of these bikes. You know, like Aventon's given them a break on the retail price, of course, so that they sell it for the same price and they get a little cut. But you know, they're going to be trying to sell, you know, racks and locks and extended warranties and service plans and everything else. So I don't think they're marking up the bikes themselves.
yeah. I typically see when bike shops sell dropship bikes, they sell them for like the sticker price, which is there's usually like a pop up on the dropship bikes that drops $200 off the price, and special whatever. They usually have the list price at a bike shop, so that's probably the margin, which can be 100, 200, whatever. And then oftentimes there's an included like set up your bike. They'll tighten the screws and do all the things that uh, bring a bike up to bike shop specs. that dropship bikes don't always have, and that'll be an extra charge as well. So there's a lot of little ways they can make some money on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
A dropper makes sense on a cargo bike because sometimes the cargo load gets high enough to make swinging a leg over a problem. That's true. How do states expect bike registration when they don't accept a serial number as a VIN? I mean, there's a ton of problems um, that nobody's thinking about. I wish the
Yeah.
laws were applied to the locations and how people ride those locations instead of the bikes. Yeah, but that adds another layer of complexity that we are already in and over our heads in complexity. Good morning, all. I have a question. What's the best voltage an e-bike battery should be stored at for only 3 to 6 months? I've heard so many different voltages. My best guess, though, I thought around 40%. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, they often say the magic number is sort of 50%. I think that's largely just because it's an easy figure to aim for. But if you're keeping it anywhere between like 20 to 80%, that's doing most of the work towards keeping it in its happy place. You basically just want to avoid letting it sit full or letting it sit empty. So 50% is often considered the industry standard storage voltage. Like when you buy a battery that's never been cycled or just has its like first factory cycle, it usually comes at 50%. So that's the thing to aim for. But really for me, like I just make sure it's not empty or full. Like I know if I've charged my bike up and I realize I'm not going to use it for a while, I'll just like ride it around the block for the 5 minutes or so just to like burn off the top, 5 or 10%.
I was going to say I do the lazy version of that where I just don't like if I'm going to store the bike for a while, I just don't plug it in. So
Yeah.
whatever I rode it around, and so theoretically anywhere from like 50 to 80%.
Yeah.
You
And it
just
comes down to
you just
like, are you trying to maximize the life? Like
yeah.
it's like those hyper mild people where like, there are some small tricks you can do, but like the difference is diminishing returns. So
All right, an outdoor wireless charger only makes sense in ideal weather, not ideal in snow and for muddy mountain bikes. I like the idea for home use. Yeah, I mean those are kind of edge cases. I think probably most people just ride bikes on normal streets during dry weather. So um,
yeah. Also, a lot of mountain bikes don't even have a kickstand, so you won't have to
right.
worry about that.
All right, gambling exposed says I'm a friend of Fred Lambert, and God, it's the first time I see Micah. I did not know Fred had a twin brother. I didn't know you guys looked alike. Do you guys think
I,
you?
I think just the hair, maybe. I
Yeah,
don't know
maybe
if
the hair.
that's the
Maybe I
yeah.
only
Those white
hire
dudes
really
all
good.
look alike.
Yeah, yeah. Standardized ports, yes, please. Yeah, I think everybody's down with standardized ports. It's not a hard sell. Are Halong batteries a quality battery compared to Samsung, LG? I don't know anything about Halong. What about you?
So Halong, I believe they are a pack assembler. So I'm not aware that they actually make their own cells. So I don't think that it's a direct comparison to Samsung and LG. It's like saying like how does Dole compare to like an apple or a banana? Like Dole's just the company that brings them in. So
Right.
I think Halong sometimes uses Samsung and LG cells to build their packs.
All right. Thank you guys. Appreciate any and all info. Welcome. All right. In New York State, you don't need an MC endorsement for a 50cc or under scoot uh, bike, just a regular driver's license. Yeah, that would be fine. 50 cc's is what the equivalent probably of 750 watts or something.
Maybe a little higher, but yeah, I mean a lot of those 50cc bikes go like I don't know, 35, even like 40 miles an hour. So maybe a
Okay.
little higher than 750.
Even if you can charge at home, battery swapping makes distance possible. Nobody would have the patience for if they had to charge. That's true, especially with scooters and other bigger vehicles. I've always liked Royal Enfield styling, and this is no exception. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I know of a bike that's been more universally liked. Like nobody's like, not for me. That thing, just everybody loves that thing. They did a really
Yeah,
good
it's
job.
not very divisive. Yeah. Some people might not be their favorite brand, but a few people are like, "Oh, I hate the way it looks." Like it's
Right,
people respect at least.
right. Tesla, we're going to stake our entire company on humanoid robots. Kawasaki, hold my beer. Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, that's a good finisher. All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. This was definitely a fun mix of stories, and we'll be excited to have you guys back here for the next Wheelie podcast in another 2 weeks. We'll see you next time.